Heroism is the marrow of myth, the lodestone that turns the world of fantasy from a grim dirge into a living epic. Without it, stories, and by extension the characters who inhabit them, risk spiraling into narratives of pure entropy, where cynicism thrives and the only victories are Pyrrhic. Heroism is necessary because it is not merely the answer to evil, it is a challenge to the indifferent universe, a bright thread of meaning woven into the chaos. So what makes a hero, right? Is it strength, destiny, or the favor of the gods? No. A hero is defined by their refusal to accept the ordinary, their defiance of the world's quiet demand to stay small, to stay safe, and stay silent. Heroism is not the absence of fear or failure, it is the will to rise despite them. In a time where stories cling to cynicism and characters shrink into passivity, we need heroes more than ever. Not for their triumphs, but for their audacity to try. Because without heroism, what is left? A story that meanders, a life that surrenders, a world that forgets it can be better. First, let's talk about the lure of cowardice. Rejecting heroism is intellectually seductive, right? It allows us to retreat into detachment, to sneer at idealism as childish or naive, but in doing so we abdicate responsibility. Stories without heroism are not more realistic, they are stories written by and for the defeated. When we strip away the possibility of transcendent goodness, we betray the foundational principle of storytelling, that the human spirit is capable of greatness. Cowardice is the easiest choice. It is a path well-trod and inviting, lined with the soft promises of safety, detachment, and the illusion of intellectual superiority. It whispers that engagement is futile, that ideals are foolish, and that heroism, true self-sacrificing heroism, is the delusion of those too naive to see the world as it is. Cowardice is not just inaction, it is an abdication of responsibility, masquerading as pragmatism. The lure of cowardice is rooted in fear, but it is adorned in the trappings of wisdom. To the coward, moral clarity is a dangerous mirage, a false guide leading toward ruin. The coward tells themselves that ambiguity is safer, that compromise, even with the reprehensible, is more mature than conviction. In tabletop role-playing games, this manifests as characters who avoid taking stands, who refuse to commit to ideals, and who excuse their self-interest as mere survival. The party that watches atrocities unfold because, it's not their problem, has not found realism, they have succumbed to cowardice. And the reason cowardice thrives in modern storytelling is because it is presented as sophistication. A character who refuses to act because they are afraid, because they doubt, because they would rather save their own skin is lauded as complex. But this is a distortion. Complexity does not reside in the absence of action or conviction. It resides in the struggle to act despite fear, despite doubt, and despite overwhelming odds. A hero who falters but presses on is infinitely more complex than a cynic who never tries. In the context of tabletop games, cowardice often cloaks itself in the language of rationality. Why confront the corrupt duke when it might bring the ire of the entire court? Why challenge the dragon when there's a hoard to loot elsewhere? This mindset reduces adventurers to scavengers, unwilling to risk themselves for anything greater than material gain. It drains the game of stakes, flattening what could be a tale of courage and conviction into a series of shallow transactions. The true danger of cowardice is that it erodes meaning. Stories, whether in books, film, or tabletop games, are at their best when they grapple with the fundamental questions of right and wrong, hope and despair, action and inaction. Cowardice rejects these questions. It scoffs at the notion of taking a stand and replaces it with a nihilistic shrug. The world, it says, is too complex for heroes, better to do nothing and avoid the cost of failure. But this is a lie. Cowardice offers safety, but it does so at the expense of growth, significance, and impact. To act is to risk failure, loss, and pain, but it is also to risk victory, to risk transformation, and to risk making the world better. Cowardice ensures that you will never fail because you will never try. Heroism, on the other hand, is a gamble with stakes worth playing for. Cowardice is seductive because it allows us to avoid responsibility. It tells us that the world is too broken, the villains too powerful, and the systems too entrenched to change. It tells us that inaction is wisdom and that disengagement is survival. But to give in to this lure is to accept mediocrity, to watch the world crumble while convincing ourselves it was never worth saving to begin with. In tabletop games and in real life, rejecting the lure of cowardice is a call to arms. It is the choice to fight, not because the odds are in your favor, but because the fight itself matters. Cowardice is easy, but heroism is necessary. The world doesn't need spectators, it needs people who are willing to risk, to try and to fail spectacularly, even if it means there's a chance, however small, of triumph. To expand some more on mediocrity, let's explore the myth of the mediocre. It is a pernicious lie whispered by modern storytelling as if it were profound. It tells us that heroism is obsolete, that greatness is out of reach, and that the most authentic characters are those who wallow in mediocrity. This is the era of the anti-hero, the flawed everyman who stumbles through the world without a compass, defined not by their aspirations but by their failures. Relatable? Perhaps, but inspiring? I don't know. At its core, the myth of the mediocre arises from a misplaced desire for realism. We are told that heroes are unrelatable, that their shining armor blinds us to the grittiness of life. Stories, we are told, should be grounded, populated by characters whose struggles mirror our own. And so, the extraordinary is shaved down until nothing remains but the mundane. Adventurers who fight not for ideals but for coin, leaders who govern with cynicism rather than vision, and villains who are not evil but merely misunderstood. The problem with this obsession is that it forgets what stories are for. Tales of the mediocre may comfort us in our mediocrity, but they cannot challenge us to rise above it. They hold a mirror to the world as it is, but offer no glimpse of the world as it could be. They wallow in what is already known and lived, mistaking stagnation for depth and nihilism for sophistication. Mediocre characters might make for decent protagonists in, certain genres, but they falter in the realms of fantasy and myth. These are places where the ordinary is inherently insufficient, where the stakes demand more than survival, they demand transcendence. A story set in a world of magic, gods, and ancient evils cannot credibly hinge on the same tired struggles of the average people. When everything around a character is extraordinary, their refusal to rise to the occasion is not relatable, it is cowardly. Moreover, the myth of the mediocre strips stories of their capacity to inspire. A tabletop party made up of characters who have no ambition beyond personal gain or no virtue greater than grudging pragmatism becomes a collection of cogs, grinding away without purpose. What do they fight for? What do they build? Without heroes to believe in, the worlds we create are doomed to stagnation. Their conflicts reduced to petty squabbles rather than grand struggles of good versus evil, hope versus despair. The myth of the mediocre is seductive because it absolves us of responsibility. It tells us that greatness is for somebody else, that the best we can do is shuffle through life buffeted by forces beyond our control. But the truth is that the ordinary is not synonymous with authentic. It is simply safe. Heroism, on the other hand, is dangerous. It demands choices, sacrifices, and the courage to risk everything for something greater. If we cling to this myth, we reduce our stories and ourselves to mediocrity. But if we reject it, if we embrace the extraordinary, we unlock the true potential of storytelling, to inspire, to challenge, and to remind us that greatness is not a relic of the past, but a possibility for the present. And to do this, we need to get inside the mind of the hero.
A man might be thought wealthy if someone were to draw the story of his deeds, that they may be remembered.
Such a man might be thought wealthy, indeed.
A hero is not born from circumstance, but from choice. It is not the sword they wield, the magic they command, or the victories they achieve that make them extraordinary. It is the architecture of their mind. The hero sees the same world as everyone else. They see the chaos, the suffering, and the overwhelming odds. But where mediocrity sees only futility and cowardice sees only safety, the hero sees purpose. What separates the hero from the mediocre or the cowardly is not their power, but their perspective. The mind of the hero is defined by its defiance against the myth of the mediocre and the lure of cowardice. Where the ordinary mind finds solace in smallness, mistaking mediocrity for authenticity, the hero recognizes that the ordinary is a prison of self-imposed limits. The hero does not deny their humanity, they transcend it, not by abandoning their flaws, but by refusing to let those flaws define them. The hero rejects the myth that greatness is unreachable or that virtue is naive. They know the world is complex and broken, but they also know that surrendering to its brokenness is not wisdom, it is cowardice in disguise. The hero's mind is not free of fear or doubt, but it is free of the paralysis they cause. Fear is met with resolve, doubt with determination, and uncertainty with the courage to act anyways. What separates the hero is not power or privilege, but choice. Cowardice whispers that inaction is safety and that ideals are burdens too heavy to bear. The hero understands this as the lie it is, for nothing is more costly than failing to act when action is necessary. To the hero, the call to rise is not a burden, it is a birthright. They are ordinary only in origin, but extraordinary in their refusal to remain so. The hero's mind is forged in the crucible of responsibility, where others shirk the weight of the world's problems, excusing themselves with claims of helplessness or irrelevance. The hero steps forward. They understand that no one else may come. There is no guarantee of rescue, no certainty of salvation, and in the absence of assurance, they become the answer to the question of who will. Responsibility for the hero is not a burden thrust upon them, it is a mantle they willingly accept because they know that meaning is only found in action. This clarity of purpose is what protects the hero from the lure of cowardice. Cowardice offers comfort, like I said, the soft lie that avoidance is survival, that inaction is wisdom, and that refusing to choose is somehow neutral. But the hero knows better. They see that every inaction is itself a choice, one that perpetuates injustice, surrenders to despair, or allows evil to flourish. Where cowardice shrinks from the risk of failure, the hero embraces it. They understand that failure is not the opposite of heroism, but a necessary companion to it. To strive is to risk falling short, but to refuse to strive at all is to already be defeated. The hero also defies the myth of the mediocre, the insidious notion that greatness is reserved for the chosen few, that most are destined only to watch from the sidelines. The hero does not claim to be special by nature, they are extraordinary because they choose to act where others do not. They do not wait for fate or destiny to hand them a cause, they seize it. The mediocre person tells himself stories of what they cannot do. Too weak, too small, and too constrained. The hero tells themselves a different story, one in which weakness is overcome, limitations are pushed, and the impossible becomes inevitable through sheer force of will. Yet the hero is not without doubt, and therein lies their greatest strength. The hero questions themselves, they wrestle with fear, and they contemplate retreat. But unlike the coward, they do not stop there. Doubt becomes a whetstone, sharpening their convictions rather than dulling them. They do not deny the difficulty of their path, they acknowledge it, and they walk forward anyways. It is this choice, made and remade in the face of fear and failure over and over again, that separates the hero from the ordinary. Ultimately, the hero's mind is a paradox, filled with humility yet driven by audacity. They understand their place in the grand tapestry of existence, recognizing how small one life can seem against the scale of history, and yet they also understand the immense power of a single choice, a single act of courage that can ripple outward and shape the world. The hero is not a god. They're not immune to weakness, nor are they a fool blind to the odds. They are human, flawed, and vulnerable, and it is precisely this humanity that makes their defiance, their courage, and their triumphs so profound. So I've spoken a lot about gray morality, moral complexity, and then continued on with evil villains and mythical evil races. I think this is a good first step into good, defining the hero and providing a good jumping off point to discuss further. So what do you all think about this, right? Let me know in the comments. Either way, thank you for watching. I am Trill, and I hope you enjoyed.